Afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting of the Western Riverside Council of Governments to order. I'd like to ask that you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda is roll call. Somewhere in there's a roll call. So please push the button yes if you're here. Push the button no if you're not here. Is Marion pushing your buttons down there, Kevin?
Give me a button.
All right. We got enough people here to have a meeting, so let's meet. The next item is item 4, minutes from August 6th. Are there any requests to make amendments before we vote? Any requests to make amendments to the minutes? If not, please cast your vote or abstention.
Chuck, did you ask for public comments?
I did not.
Supervisor Jeffries, if you'd like to make a verbal vote.
I'll abstain.
Thank you, sir.
That's a yes. Sorry.
And Janice, I did skip over item 3, public comments. Do we have any requests to speak under public comments?
I have no requests.
Okay. I must have known that psychically or psychotically. And I also noticed under the voting, it was waiting on a vote from the TAC chair, and why does it show that? They don't get a vote. Do they?
No, sir. It shouldn't show up next time.
Okay, thanks. All right, we'll move on down to consent calendar. We have items 5A through 5, well, looks like 5H. Are there any items to be pulled under consent calendar? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent calendar. I see one request from Calamesa. You have something you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, I'd just like to pull B.
Okay. We'll pull
5B.
item 5B, small cell deployment. We'll have a separate discussion and a separate vote on consent calendar item 5B.
Mr. Chair, I need to stop the vote for the consent calendar as a whole to pull item B. Give me just a second.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll take a second. Okay, now we're just voting on 5B, and that was the one we were pulling.
But,
We need to still have a vote on the consent calendar.
all right.
Everything except 5B.
Well,
Okay. Okay, this is the consent calendar, all the items except 5B. City of Norco.
City of Norco, please vote.
Okay, that motion carries 20-0 and no abstentions. Now 5B. And Mr. Hewitt, do you want a staff report or you just want to make a comment?
No, I'd just like to make a comment if it's okay, Chair. Yeah, the thing is that when this came out with the state bill that was almost identical, I was actually one of the few, I think, that supported it. I believe that revenue's a great thing, but it can be too good of a thing too, and I think this benefits every cell phone user, which is pretty much everyone today. When we go ahead and give jurisdictions unlimited access to do so, it just adds on more and more costs. I'm opposed to this. I like the bill because it keeps us from having too much power over this, and that's why I'm going to be voting no.
Okay, so you'd be voting no on the recommendation to oppose the bill.
Exactly.
So you're in support of the bill?
Yes. Double negative means yes, yes.
I thought you just said you didn't like the bill. You do like the bill.
Well, I like the bill because it opposes the issues that are going to, yeah, they're trying to go ahead and keep us from making sure that we can put these a lot of places and do it, and not by death by bureaucracy and such. So there's some safeties that'll help keep costs down.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Please register your votes. We're voting on item 5B. That motion carries with 18 yeses, 2 noes, and no abstentions. We'll move on to reports and discussions. Items 6A, a report from...
And I don't see Aaron Sassy in the audience, sir.
Yeah, I don't see her either.
She said she might be late.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6B, Regional Homeless Services Update. Andrea Howard. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the Executive Committee. Andrea Howard, Program Manager here at WRCOG. The purpose of this item is to provide you with an update on homelessness-related activities WRCOG has been involved in recently. In a moment, I will invite representatives from each of our Beyond team-funded homelessness partnerships to provide an update on their progress to date as we near the end of the Beyond funding cycle. But first, I would like to turn your attention to attachment 1 in your staff report for this item. That's on page 225. It's the Regional Homelessness Statement of Principles. The Statement of Principles were developed with input from member agency staff using best practices in addressing homelessness and serve to institute consistency and better opportunities for collaboration between member agencies. They were adopted by this committee in March of 2017 with the goal of having them be adopted by each of your member jurisdictions subsequently. However, to our knowledge, to date, only the cities of Temecula, Harupa Valley, Lake Elsinore, and Riverside have done so. So we just wanted to have this item included here as a reminder. If any of you are interested in having these go forward with your respective agencies and have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or other staff, and we'd be happy to assist. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Robin Gilliland of the City of Temecula and Cheryl Marie Hansberger from the City of Riverside. Robin has been one of the leaders in the Regional Homeless Alliance, and Cheryl Marie has similarly played a primary role in the Western Riverside Homeless Collaborative. Each project received $79,000 through the Beyond team-funded initiative, and they have been working on complementary efforts in the Southwest and Northwest areas of the subregion to better equip our members to address homelessness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Robin.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored today to share with you some of the amazing stories that we've accomplished with really a small amount, and yet it meant so much to all of us and to the families that we were able to help. So I'd like to start with, the evaluation and addressing this complex issue from a regional perspective. About 4 years ago, we started the Regional Homeless Alliance in Southwest Riverside County, and that includes Temecula, Murrieta, Wildomar, Lake Elsinore, and Menifee. We really started it organically, mostly out of sheer desperation on how do we help those experiencing homelessness on our streets. We were learning and trying to understand it as quickly as we could. As part of our evaluation period, we did an asset assessment. With the challenge with the asset assessment initially was to actually get the service providers to answer the survey. So what we did is we tried to think outside the box, which I will borrow the supervisor's words, let's get rid of the box, right? And really, we sat down and we just called them all. With the survey in front of us, we called every single provider that we could come up with in our region and just asked the questions. And what that did for us was amazing. The results were incredible. We were able to really create those relationships kind of by accident with a lot of those service providers just by speaking with them on the phone. What we discovered, too, is a lot of the missing things in our region were childcare, housing, and mental health services, which I'm certain many of you have heard from other areas. But because of the relationships that this developed, we were able to work with a local church in Temecula to do welcome home baskets, and that is for families who obviously have been living at street level or in their cars. And these baskets can be as simple as cleaning products or sheets for their kids' beds, which we hopefully will get from another church in Menifee, who've also been providing some of the larger furniture items. And then we also have a financial commitment from a local church in Murrieta. So we were really proud at how all this has come together. So you can see that providing a coordinated homeless outreach services, we are definitely using public, private, and nonprofit sector resources. We want to increase housing opportunities to individuals, families, and veterans experiencing homelessness while maintaining an effective homeless prevention program. Now, our coordinated services for our region, I must admit, is someone outside the county system. We have developed great relationships with behavioral health and other county entities, and it has been critical to some of our successes. Every other month, we do reach out with having a bi-monthly meeting with the Regional Homeless Alliance, where all 5 of us get together with both our electeds as well as many of our nonprofit partners. We just did that last week, where we updated them on a lot of these successes. As you can see, these are the 5 cities that I mentioned that constitutes the Regional Homeless Alliance. Like I said, about 4 years ago, we developed this organically, and it was really critical, and we began to work regionally. The thing that I'd like to point out that oftentimes people forget is, based on our point in time, our 5 cities show a steady increase of those experiencing homelessness. From 2017 to 18, it was a 13% increase. And between 15 and 18, this was shocking when we saw it, but we've had a 62% increase in those experiencing homelessness in these 5 cities, just in that 3-year period. So we do want to take this seriously. At this time, I'd like to introduce all of you to Brad Fieldhouse from CityNet. He is our contract street level provider, which he can say much more eloquently than I.
Thanks, Robin. Pleasure to be here today. Brad Fieldhouse, Executive Director of CityNet. We are a professional street outreach team. We're based in Orange County. We work for a number of cities in Orange County as well as the county as well. We also have the privilege of working in the city of Temecula. For the purpose of today, we were part of the WRCOG effort that sort of worked with the McKinney-Vento liaisons at the school districts in all 5 cities. And so we were sort of the referral agency working with the school district to provide linkage for the families that they referred to us. So in this case, we weren't sort of street level. We were working with the families no matter which condition of homelessness they were experiencing. And as you see on your screen, we were able to help 78 people. That's a total of 23 families we're able to access from all the districts. And we were able to sort of kind of do whatever it takes, really, honestly, to sort of kind of meet with them on their terms. It's interesting when you get a referral from the school district, there's some conversation that has happened privately with people that sort of have to tell their story publicly to liaisons at the school, and then they refer to us, and then we're able to sort of do whatever it takes to help. And you can see the numbers there. I mean, great success stories. We have 100% retention of those families still to currently, that they're still all housed and stable, continuing to follow up with them as well. And just one other little point for my little piece is what's interesting about this number as it relates to sort of the McKinney-Vento or the families that sort of are experiencing. When you look at the point in time count numbers, and sort of the way we access point in time count numbers, we work street level in Temecula, and so we're pretty familiar with most of the folks in, oh, excuse me. And when the reality is a lot of the people that we bump into that the point in time count doesn't necessarily capture, so those numbers are sort of low. We've been doing censuses all around cities around Southern California, and we typically see that the numbers are typically double when you sort of kind of do a complete census and you kind of go out there really at night when a lot of these families are sort of living behind the Walmart. So while these numbers are significant, the truth is we're still getting referrals from the school district. We were unable to sort of follow up on all of them. So the need is great, both sort of the numbers that Robin was referring to, but also the numbers that we're not capturing. Sort of not the almost homeless, but the ones that truly are homeless, but they're not necessarily identifiable because they're not sort of the HUD level, street level homeless folks. So thanks for letting me share. If you have any questions, I'll be hiding out behind you.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah.
Oh, one more thing, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically how this all came about, we decided to, with the rapid rehousing pieces, with part of the WRCOG funding, we decided to partner with CityNet and partner with our school districts because we wanted to get the moms and kids and dads and kids out of cars. So you can see this is that success. The other organization that we contracted with to do more of the street level outreach was Social Work Action Group, and you can see their numbers here. They've been quite successful in the region as well. So we are thrilled and excited with what we were able to accomplish, and we definitely appreciate your support. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Cheryl.
I'm here today to present a little bit about what's going on with the Western Regional Homeless Collaboration or Coalition, which consists of the cities of Corona, Jurupa Valley, and Riverside, plus the county and Path of Life Ministries. Our aim out of the street was a little different. We had a 4-part mission that was to expand resources available to serve the homeless in our region. Number 2 was to increase collaboration amongst the organizations, to develop a toolkit that could be shared with all of your organizations, and to reframe the narrative around homelessness. The first slide that you're seeing right now is about expanding resources. We also started with asset mapping, what is available in our city and what are the gaps. We had about 53 organizations within the 3 cities to return the asset mapping survey. All of that information will be fed into the 211 system, so anybody regionally that were to call into 211 and need services, those would be available. We also worked on connecting in with our faith-based community. As the city of Riverside looked around our city to see what were our biggest assets available that were underutilized, the faith community was one of them. So as we had conversations with our partners, we thought that that was equal in other communities. We connected with about 77 faith organizations in the 3 communities. And of those, 50 committed to doing more. So we're currently working with them to see what does more mean and what does that look like. We asked them for 3 or 4 things. The first is we asked them for financial resources donated to a local nonprofit to serve the homeless population. We also asked them, do you have housing or do you have underutilized land that you would be willing to give us to create housing? We asked them for what we're calling high-trained, high-skilled volunteers, so people like a social worker or a medical doctor that could come in and assist us. And then we ask them for a variety of other kind of soft support. Of their, about 17 of those 77 have made financial contributions, with others on the list that we continue to work with to drive that to a what is this financial contribution and how do we get the check. I think one of the biggest and most exciting things we've done has to do with the land available to make housing. We have generated 13 different sites which have said, we would be willing to partner with you to build housing to serve the homeless. And in those cases, the partnerships come with more than just the land, but also we will embrace this community as ours and try to help them. And some have also offered jobs to those individuals, and some have offered other kinds of medical or mental support as well. Of those 13, those can generate the potential of 325 additional housing units in our area. And just to give you guys perspective, our combined point-in-time count's about 500 people, so that's substantial. And some of those units would house more than one people if it's a family or a couple. In here, we've developed, as part of this, outreach materials that will be shared amongst the other cities. We hired Path of Life Ministries to come and do our outreach for us. And then we are currently piloting a landlord incentive program that will provide kind of a signing bonus to landlords to pick a homeless individual, kind of an at-risk individual, over a family or other professionals maybe that they're competing with for limited housing stock. And all those materials, again, will be shared. On the collaboration front, we've had about 9 meetings, and they're ongoing. We had our best meeting probably last week, so the momentum is really building. And we looked at how can we expand advocates. We had a faith summit early on to reach out to the churches, and that faith summit generated 190 people who attended with us who were interested in this topic. And so you can see the community has really bought into the bigger effort. We currently have over 200 faith leaders that are currently engaging and showing up to meetings and participating and offering resources. And then we made a presentation at all 3 cities' COPS and clergy meeting. The toolkit's another thing we've really worked on. We've collected about 17 sample policies that will be shared. We're currently have all the content developed for the toolkit, and we need to find a place to build it out. There's 4 training modules that we did in there, things like how do you go and outreach with the homeless community? How do you find housing? How do you help people navigate to get into the housing? And what do you need to know about homelessness to understand working with this population? We also did the asset mapping survey and some communication tools. So some of our lessons learned, the first one was that collaboration between the jurisdictions with drastically different resources had its set of challenges. We learned that from the point of having to sign a contract with multiple cities down to implementing how does outreach look and how does joint case conferencing look. The time frame for the grant are really short in the life cycle of homeless change, and so that's been one of our challenges, is we've had to sometimes structure things in a way to get to grant completion that we would have structured differently had we had a little more flexibility. We learned that alignment between electeds and staff is absolutely essential and something that we need to work on across the region. The smaller cities may not have the avenue to hire is one of the things we learned. In our grant, we put in a little bit of money to have a part-time person to lead some of these efforts because we knew some of the smaller cities had very limited staff and it would be a reach for them to add. And some of those cities didn't even have a way to hire somebody, and so we were able to find a creative workaround by sharing as a collaboration, but that's something that was in the get-go a challenge. We learned that joint case conferencing is really hard in smaller cities. So we originally had thought we'll come together and do case conferencing where we review a list of homeless individuals and where they're at and what they need, and we'll work together. But the smaller cities didn't necessarily have the staff to do that. So instead we changed our approach, and the smaller cities are participating where they can, but the other organizations that are always at the joint case conferencing meetings have stepped up and said, we'll look out for you at those meetings and we'll bring you the information and we'll advocate for you and work with you and train you. So there's been a lot of training from the bigger to the smaller cities, I think in both coalitions. We learned that providing funding for a dedicated program manager, a contracted individual, was very helpful in the outreach and some of the rapid rehousing efforts. We learned that dedicated staff and resources are impactful and should be expanded. So one of the common barriers for the smaller cities is that they don't have a dedicated staff to work on this. And so they're relying on police officers, they're relying on maybe volunteers, they're relying on other cities to kind of carry them, and they have the interest and the heart to try to take this on. They just don't have the resources available. Emergency shelters are needed, especially interim shelters. So inevitably the short-term shelters will receive somebody, they may have housing long-term, there may be a lag and there's no in-between, and we often lose people in that in-between. So we have to figure out how do we fill that gap in that pipeline, if you will. Child care sponsors are needed, and this has also been one of the advantages of working with the churches, is many of our local churches do operate child care facilities and have said, we'll offer that child care. So those are the types of resources we have coming to the table from the faith community. Transportation to treatment and other places is essential, and also non-local shelter. So not every city has a shelter, so that's a problem, and that creates some political dynamics sometimes that we had to navigate through, that if you do have a shelter, then it seems like everybody's sending them to you, and if you don't have a shelter, you want to help people, and you can only send them somewhere else. And so I think we all have the heart to serve the population, but that gets a little bit messy sometimes. Of course, the mental health issue is the beast in the room that we have to address. There's not enough services, there's not enough facilities, there's not enough effort focused on mental health, and we're not going to solve this problem without that. And then older adults, we're seeing a lot of older adults become homeless, and what's happening is they have the limited resources and option for meaningful employment, and so they don't have the same support that they may get somewhere else, but they also don't have the skills to go out and readily get a job to afford market rate housing. And so this is one of the things I think that we're all alarmed about, is that this older population is just increasing to us, and we don't really know how we're going to solve that yet. So some of the recommendations from both groups together, that perhaps we should send a delegation to visit the desert to explore the long-term WRCOG role for in homelessness, that we need a reoccurring stream of funding, that support from WRCOG professional services, including grant writing, would be helpful to us, and maybe we should be pursuing those grants as a region, forcing us to work together more effectively. We sometimes need the human resources help in some cities, or the avenue to hire. We need to provide dedicated streams of funding to contract a regional program manager. It really makes a difference when you have somebody that could come in and really manage at that level. Even in our city, who probably has some of the most resources for homelessness, we struggle because we have people trying to be program managers that are also supposed to be out on the front lines serving the homeless, and that's a really difficult role to play. There's never enough time for either. State and federal advocacy is really critical for us moving forward, and that we thought maybe that it would be helpful to look at the fellows program and maybe for a period of time test and see if we all assigned our fellows to homelessness, what would that look like? What could that potential collaboration look like? And I think with that, that's where we're going to end today. We're both available to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you. I do have one more introduction to make, but Mayor Bailey, I see you had requested to speak. You want to wait till the end?
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
He's going to harass me.
He's what?
Going to harass me.
He's going to harass you? We have a sergeant in the back that'll take care of him. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity also now. The county recently has hired a new deputy CEO for Homeless Solutions. Her name is Natalie Komora, and I'd like to ask her to come up and just briefly introduce herself so that people can put a name to the face to the name. And we're very fortunate to have her come to Riverside County. She comes with a wealth of experience. Good afternoon, Natalie. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, not at all.
If you want to just say hi and sit, you're welcome to do that as well.
Well, good afternoon. I'm really grateful to be here this afternoon and to see the level of interest and energy going into addressing homelessness countywide and at so many different levels. It's a lot to absorb, so I'm happy to sit back and listen. I've been out to some of the communities, and I'm going to be continuing to meet with, I think, who I've got left, Supervisor Ashley is the last of the supervisors, I think, that I need to meet. And I've already met some of the elected officials, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you in your respective communities and learn more about what we can be doing as a county to work collaboratively to address homelessness.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Mayor Bailey.
Well, thanks, CEO Johnson, for hiring Natalie. Great choice, great hire. She's already been over. I think her first meeting was in my office before she was actually an employee. So the commitment of your newest assistant CEO is the standard, it seems like. And so she's setting a high bar in terms of her leadership with the organization. I just want to thank you and her for your commitment and for coming over and sharing some time with us. It's been, I think, a month ago, but again, thank you. And then Robin and Cheryl, thank you all for this great report. I believe the intent was met in terms of what we expected with the Beyond grants. Number one being a collaborative approach, getting different cities together talking. That's always a good thing when we're having positive conversations about issues that are affecting us, you know, and we know that we can't push problems back and forth, and the balloon effect that occurs is not a solution. And so I think we have gone in the right direction by getting rid of that pop in the balloon, getting rid of the box, whatever you want to call it. It is solution oriented, as you can tell. There was lessons learned as a part of this. We talked to Brad as well, and I know that he is an incredible, talented individual with great experiences, diverse experiences. And so I hope that we can keep him around and CityNet around. As you saw, there were two distinct approaches, one focused on schools and the other focused in the faith-based communities, and they both had results. And so that's another reason I think the intent of the Beyond grants worked out, is that we're going beyond. We're looking at, you know, another way to solve this intractable issue, and you can't end homelessness without housing. And so what is the next step is what we should be thinking about. What is the next step? Not only do we need that interim approach, shelter, but we need a long-term approach in terms of housing those neighbors without homes. So I'm proud of the work that both groups did, and I'm grateful for the lessons that we've learned, and I hope that we can put some of those to practice and we can continue the momentum in terms of serving the least last and the lost in our county.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. City of Eastvale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good presentation, and I agree with the prior comments of my colleagues. I'm curious, I didn't hear a lot of feedback with respect to the relationship with law enforcement and how kind of the daily interactions are going. And, you know, for us not having a huge homeless problem, those are kind of the interactions that we see is, you know, the aggressive panhandling, the welfare calls. So is that part of your program? How is that working? Can you give one or two sentences on that?
Sure, thank you. In our region, and I can speak specifically to Temecula, we have 4 dedicated officers. This is what they do, and it is critical to the success. And I can share a quick story, if you don't mind, on how critical it is and how it works so well. Is we've done a couple of what we call outreach in-reach days, where basically our law enforcement officers who know legitimately every single person on our street, they have personal relationships with them, which number one is critical to this working. And 2, they literally will go out, find them, bring them back. We'll have some resources set up at one of our community centers that allows people to get some resources that may be available to them. So it's sort of a 2-pronged approach. We've hired CityNet to be our street outreach, help them, get them connected to resources, and law enforcement who knows them all, but also has to do what they call the ugly part, which is enforce. The 4 gentlemen we have, they'd prefer not to arrest people. They really want to help people, but oftentimes these individuals don't give them much choice. But what we found is with the balance, it's really making a difference, at least in our city. I can say that to be sure. We've had people show up at we have a new help center, which is sort of like an access center. People have shown up and said, I don't know what to do, I'm done. Like, the police are like here, they won't let me like do anything wrong, I can't be drunk anymore, you know. And then on the other side, what do we need to do to get help? And that's because CityNet has also come right alongside them or in the next few minutes and said, we're here for you. And our officers legitimately, we kind of joke about it, but on the way to jail, they're saying, when you're done, when you get released, we're still here for you when you want help. So there is a real critical balance to that we've discovered.
And it does work.
All right, thank you, Robin. City of Temecula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you, WRCOG, for making this possible. We have seen wonderful results in the Alliance, in Southwest Alliance, and especially in the city of Temecula. But I want to stress that key elements are the relationships you make outside your city. We have developed a great relationship with law enforcement in Riverside County. We established an MOU with Riverside County Flood Control that actually allows us without having to get permission every time to go into Murrieta Creek and Temecula Creek in order to enforce the law, to make the 72-hour notification for eviction. And then we also have established through that MOU a fund that allows us to go ahead and clean up those areas and be reimbursed by Riverside County Flood Control. So that is key, in addition to the partnerships that we've made with our local churches. And the same is true for being able to enforce the law on your on and off ramps. We know in Temecula that you can receive, they can make $300 to $500 a day if they're allowed to stay on an off-ramp for any length of time. And so we have an understanding with the CHP, because that's really not our jurisdiction, that we can go down those off-ramps to enforce the solicitation laws. So you need especially to get those items in place, and we can't do it alone. This is an issue that is never going to go away. It may get better as the economy continues to thrive. It may get better, but we have to plan these things for the long haul. So we've got to find those sources of funding to support efforts, and we are going to have to eventually talk about housing, because we're just pushing people up against a wall until we can do something with housing to rotate them in and out. So thank you, WRCOG, and great job, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Dr. White.
Yes, I had a question and a comment. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the presentation, but my question is about the inclusiveness of the school districts in terms of your collaboration. At what level are you collaborating?
Yeah, we thought it was a natural partnership with the local school districts. What better way to find the families than through the McKinney-Vento kids? And sadly, through those partnerships, we discovered how many, literally thousands, with just in our 5 cities, are living in cars or considered McKinney-Vento students. And we basically reached out to each of the district's superintendents, and then we were put in touch with the appropriate staff member. I just received an email. Temecula Valley Unified School District is starting a homelessness for homeless students, like a subcommittee within the district. And so I'm preparing to pull all my 5 cities back together in hopes that we can continue to work together on keeping these families as rapid rehoused as we can, because we know statistically the sooner we get them back into housing, the more likely they are to remain stable and not hit our streets.
So I would like to recommend, I'll give you my card afterwards, because at the county level, we have some cohorts. So that might for the whole county. And then the second part is I wanted to share that we have unfilled slots for childcare. So for the students that are, they're not students yet, but they're in preschool and Head Start, migrant Head Start. We actually serve 1.2 million students a year, but we still have some slots available. So I think I just wanted to make sure it's out there that there's a way to partner with the county so that we can serve the children before they enter school.
Great, that's amazing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. White. Andrea, did you want to make any closing remarks before we move on to the next item?
No, sir, unless anybody else has any other questions for staff or our presenters today. Obviously, the takeaways that each of these 2 partnerships have put together require that we have continued conversations with them and explore opportunities to continue to support their efforts. And we will be coming back to you all soon with updates as we progress.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Janice, I still don't see Erin Sassy in the audience.
Nor do I, sir.
Maybe we should just call her, get her on the speaker. No, I'm just kidding. Next item is 6C. Chris Gray is going to talk about understanding the transportation analysis implications of Senate Bill 743.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Chris Gray, Director of Transportation for WRCOG. I'm here to tell you about some ongoing work we have going on right now related to the absolutely thrilling and enthralling topic of the use of vehicle miles traveled as a traffic analysis metric. That's as exciting as I can make it. So for those of you who don't follow this full time, Back in 23, Senate Bill 743 was passed. And what's important about 743 is it's a change to the approach in CEQA, which says that you can no longer use auto delay, vehicular to delay level service, which many of you are familiar with, as an analysis metric in an environmental document. And the idea was they believe that another metric, which is vehicle miles traveled, is a much better way of determining whether a project truly has traffic impacts or not. And so just to read, the slide talks about the legislative intent. They used words like appropriately balanced congestion with infill development, public health, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So since then, there has been a fundamental change in state requirements on how you do environmental documents, which trickles down to traffic studies. So again, this is a process many of you are familiar with. Right now today, if you have a project that comes before you for your approval, they're going to do an environmental document and they're going to do a traffic study. I encourage you, if you can't sleep, those are documents that are thrilling to read. I wrote many of them as a consultant. And they're very simple. In many cases, they may be very complex, but they fundamentally work in the same way. You do a series of counts, data collection. You do a series of forecasts. You say, does the project make a road or an intersection go over capacity? If it does, you have to mitigate it. And the mitigation usually is building something or paying something. And that's the way traffic studies have been done for the last 40 years. Under SB 743, it's much more complicated and it's much more different. You have to figure out what the VMT generated by the project is, which is not necessarily a straightforward process. You then have to compare that against a threshold. What's challenging is that there are no set thresholds for VMT currently. And if you go over that threshold, you have to do an impact, and then you have to mitigate it. The problem with the mitigation is you don't have typical mitigation, so you can't go out and build a road or widen an intersection. You possibly have to pay fees. Other possible mitigations are you have to go build some bicycle pedestrian paths, maybe make some transit improvements. So we realize this is going to be a problematic issue for our region because this is something that's new and this is something that's different. And so we obtained SCAG funding to do a study. It's about $200,000. And what we are doing is doing a collaborative process with our local agencies. We're doing a significant amount of research to determine what methodologies you could use. Do you use a model? Do you use some other kind of process? What potential thresholds you can use and what mitigation is used. The idea that we will come forward with a series of voluntary guidelines that your agencies could use, or you can develop them on your own. The main reason why we are doing this is because there's a significant cost savings to you. So if you were to do this individually, you would have to fund the cost to do all of the study, do all this research. We're going to do this for everyone. We're going to use localized data. At the end of the study, we're going to turn it over to you. Again, it's voluntary. If you choose to use it, your agencies want to use it, please feel free, by all means do that. And so as part of the process is we're going to be working on this roughly through the beginning of next year, March 2019. We're regularly briefing the planning directors and public works directors. We have also met with the BIA to present to them that we are doing this work. And we are also holding a series of specific focus group meetings. Our first one was with the jurisdiction staff. We have a series of, on December 19th, we have a series of meetings with a bunch of technical professionals. These are people doing environmental documents. And then finally in October, we're going to sit down with the developers and say, hey, look, we're doing this analysis. Do you have any questions or concerns? What I wanted to say is, and I want to be very clear on this, if we don't do something, then people will either have to make it up as they go along, or someone will be tempted to apply a threshold or an approach from another jurisdiction. Maybe that's LA, maybe that's San Francisco. It's not Western Riverside County. So it's incredibly important to us that we have information, methodologies, and approaches which are tailored for traffic conditions in Western Riverside County, so we're truly measuring the impact based on our region. Mr. Chairman, this is a receive and file item. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you might have, and thank you for the thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Chris. I tried to set the timer to go off so you would only have so many minutes.
I think
and those folks over there, they kept resetting it. I don't know if you're paying them, or you're related to Janice. They wouldn't let me sabotage your comments at all. They must
I can wax eloquently on this subject for hours, but
yeah, I know you can.
You may have other business.
Other questions for Mr. Gray? Excellent report. Thank you, sir. Gosh, you guys are no fun.
I just assumed it was a technical glitch.
I saw that. Item number 7, report from Technical Advisory Committee Chair.
Well, maybe just one comment as a follow-up to the homelessness discussion. Our County Board of Supervisors did take action to declare a shelter crisis for the unincorporated areas, and we're sending information out to all the cities to remind you of the importance of having a similar declaration so you're available for state funding. That message is going out to your city managers, so I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, George. Reports from our committee representatives, and I know we do have at least one, because I talked to Debbie. She wants, oh, she had to leave. She had a 3 o'clock council meeting. Yeah, so she wasn't going to be able to be here and be there. Quite frankly, I think she should be here, but Benoit, AQMD, I understand you have a new member.
We do, and that was going to be my announcement. Yes, Supervisor Marion Ashley stepped down from AQMD, and Manny Perez did a very good job on his first day and contributed to the meeting very well, and we're happy to have him there. And we have one interesting rule that keeps coming back to my subcommittee, and I won't bore you to death with it, but it'll be the 5th time back to our committee, so hopefully we'll get it done right this time. So other than that, everything went very well at the meeting.
If anybody can get it right, it's you, Ben. I know it. CalCog, Mr. Tisdale.
Nothing to report, sir.
All right. A report from our Executive Director, Rick Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything to report this afternoon.
Invite members to suggest items for future agendas, but please don't go into any detail for fear of getting arrested or worse. Any future items for agendas? All right, general announcements. San Jacinto, City of San Jacinto, the mayor.
Thank you. Most of you know that I was with the president talking about SB 54 a few months ago. He had asked me to come back. I came back to the White House to honor ICE and CBP, and we'll be doing a press release on that. But I did receive word today from the White House. I'm going back on the 20th of June to discuss with department heads what they can do to help not only the city of San Jacinto, but Riverside County. They have authorized me to ask any female mayors in the region that would like to come to please contact me today. I will get your information to the White House, and they will send you a formal invitation to join us. So if you know any female mayors that would be interested, just let me know.
Thank you, Mayor Ruiz. You said 20th of June, I think.
It's September 20th.
June, September 20th. Okay. Any other comments? We do have closed session items, so we will we'll adjourn into closed session. Anyone not associated with or holding an official position here will need to leave the room. We'll turn off all the microphones. The doors will be locked from the outside, not from the inside.
And we request that our board members come down to the audience, and we'll give the closed session to them in the audience.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.